Okay, I did a video on tools that I like to use, and for me at least, when I went on YouTube, I really wanted to see a video about cream separators because I wanted to know if they would work on goat's milk. And the cream separators that were shown on YouTube were generally not used for goat's milk, or it was just an example of how to put it together. So I was going to go through my routine that I do with my goats. My milk pail looks a little dusty because since I've hurt my hand, we haven't had any goat's milk because my goat dried up. So it's just been in storage, so excuse the dust. I got this from Hare, and this is the critical reason to have it. It has a half moon cutout in it, and the lid just pops off like that, and it's seamless inside, so there's nowhere for bacteria and stuff to get stuck. This I adore. I think this cost me $60 at Hare, and it was worth every penny. However, when my goat's in production, it doesn't hold all the milk. It holds one goat's milk, but not 4 goats worth of milk. So what I did is I took plastic buckets, and honey buckets work really well. They're about this tall. They're just a little bit smaller than this. And I just cut out a half moon in one part, and it clicks on and works fine. And so if you didn't want to spend the $60, just use a plastic bucket. It just has to be kind of thinner plastic, sturdier than an ice cream bucket. More like an icing bucket maybe at a bakery. The problem is it has to be, this is why they're so small, it has to be short enough that it'll fit under the goat's udders, especially in winter. If this cold metal touches those teats, you know, so cold, and they'll jump around. So anyway, you put this under your goat. This is where your teats are, and you milk like this. So if the goat lifts her foot, it hits the lid of the bucket. It doesn't go into your bucket and get all of your milk dirty. So when I first get out in the morning, I have a package of wet wipes in my pocket, and that way they're warm. And I don't worry about hot water. I don't worry about soapy water because I don't like to reuse rags. Rags will hold solids even, like manure solids, not just the bacteria. And so I don't reuse them. I used to reuse them, and I just think that's kind of funky. So I use wet wipes. I warm them up in my hand and carry them out, so they're nice and warm when I get out there. I use 2. First one to get all the dirt off. I go all the way up and around the bag and everything. Then I get the second one and do the same. I just go over the same part. Then I milk 2 squirts onto the ground. The reasons for doing that is, first, if you feel a stutter, like it starts to stream and then it hesitates and then it streams again, that means that she had some solids. And you don't want solids. Solids are a sign of mastitis. So I don't save it in a cup. I can feel it when I milk that there's a hesitation there, and it's from a solid leaving their teat. If you ever get brown colored milk or tints of red, it means she has mastitis. I do not keep goats that get mastitis. I give her one chance. If she gets mastitis, I'll just say, okay, this is your chance. If she gets it twice, I sell her. Because for one thing, it's genetic. It means her udder isn't healthy. It means she has bacteria and everything. And I've only ever had one goat that got mastitis, and she already had some health problems. She gave a lot of milk, but she had blood in the milk, and the milk didn't taste good, and she just didn't look real healthy. She was skinny. She'd had 4 babies, and it was really hard on her. They had to be pulled. And so those are all things that I look for in a goat. Did I have to pull her babies? Did she have complications after her pregnancy? Does she get mastitis? And if they do, I just don't keep them in my herd because doctors bills add up really, really quickly, and you don't want to have to take them to the vet a lot. So anyway, there's my milk bucket. I absolutely adore it, and you can make it out of plastic buckets, but you will love that keyhole, because especially when you're first starting, or even if a goat gets bit by a fly, even if they're not irritated with you, they will move their leg to get that fly off. And so even accidentally, you'll end up with the goat stepping in your milk, and this keeps it clean. and then you get it to your kitchen as quickly as possible. I do not use reusable rags. I have used reusable rags, but I have a really hard time getting them as clean as I want them to. And so I use throwaway filters, and they're about this big. And I just fold them up so that they make a cone, and I put them into a little colander that'll hold it in top of my jars, and that's how I strain my milk. And it tastes better, it's cleaner, but there are some people who really do well with reusable rags. I've tried boiling them after I wash them, and I just always felt like they just weren't as clean as I wanted them to be. So in an emergency situation, I would use reusable rags. I would almost think it would be better to just drink the milk as it is rather than putting it through dirty rags, though, because that bacteria, you just don't want it in your milk. Okay? You okay? Okay. Do you want to go play with your Barbies?
I want to have the kittens.
Okay, you can get your kitty and bring her and put her in your room, okay? So there's the milk jug. The other thing I wanted to show you was my cream separator. So this is the base for the cream separator, and there is a little shield here. This is where you put in oil. You use 5-weight oil, and when you first get it, you pour the oil in. It'll tell you, I think it's like 1.5 cups or something you pour it in, and then this is your crank. And then it has 3 spots for screws. And what I do is I have a cutting board in my kitchen, and I pull the cutting board out, and I already have pre-drilled holes in it. I put this on, and then I just put my screws in every time I do it. And that way, if I had a bigger kitchen, I would just leave it anchored, but I don't have a big kitchen. So that's the base. And then I was going to show you how to put this together, and this might take a while. So I'll try really hard to keep it quick. I don't know how quick it'll take. These are the arms that the milk comes out of. If I can get it in. Just like that. This is the float, and this one is plastic, and so, oh, there's another part. Oh, there it is. Okay, it's plastic, so when you clean it, you do take it apart. Otherwise, you can get milk in there. But this is your float that allows only a tiny bit of milk in at a time. And I haven't put this together in a while, so we'll see if I can do it. So this goes in here, and it's the float. Which way? I'm not sure I got that right. So, because it needs to be, let's see. Anyway, that part is self-explanatory. The hardest part is this part. This has a little tiny rod in here that fits on this little part in the base. So, this is how you do that. You have a seal that goes over, and then there's this little white piece, and this screwing it in and out is how you either thicken or thin your cream, depending on how thick or how thin you want your cream. And then, let's see. This part goes on first. This little knob, this little hole, goes right there. Okay? And I'm not actually sure what this part does, but it has ridges that the little plates go on, so you have that. And then you have, goodness, I'm really struggling. Oh, that's right. These go on this. And the way that these work is you start with one that has these little bumps on it. So you have these little bumps, and then you take one that doesn't have little bumps. And this part is square. So you're loading it up like that. So I just did one without little bumps. So now I'm going to do one with bumps. Without bumps, with bumps. Without bumps, with bumps. And when you've done it for a while, it's not nearly so slow, But like I said, it's been since spring that I used this, so it's just been a little while. And without bumps, with bumps, without bumps, with bumps. Okay. Then this part goes on like that. Then you'll see this. And this little etch goes with this little space. Okay, and then you need to kind of move it so it'll fit down and it'll squeeze down like that. And right here, you'll have a little notch and you can see the little seal right there. And then this little piece goes on here and just screws on. And this comes with a wrench, so you just wrench it down. You want it to be really good and tight, not like horrible tight, but it'll crease it down on that little seal. And this piece is for adjusting that little screw, that little yellow screw that you saw in there. So at this point, I have to think really, really hard, trying to remember how this goes. Anyway, that part has to go in there, and then I have to think really, really hard. Okay, so I had that right. Okay, so these are the spouts that the milk and the cream come out of. So, goes on like that. I don't know if you can see that. Goes on like that. And I like to keep them wide apart. And they're adjustable, so you just widen them out from each other if I could widen them out. Apparently I can't. Make sure that they're on good and tight and that they're not binding on the metal piece. The metal piece needs to be able to move. Make sure the metal piece can move. Why are you not moving, metal piece? Let's see. The bigger hole needs to go on the bottom, and make sure, sometimes I'll like spin it just to know that there we go. Now it has settled. Sometimes you have to spin the handle to make sure it's settled. Then the one with the bigger hole goes on the bottom. There we go. Now it'll work. The one with the smaller hole goes on the top. And make sure that they're stretched out from each other so that there's space and that it's away from the handle. I'm making it look really complicated, I know. Okay, then this part, this is the float that allows the milk in just a little tiny bit at a time. So look, this goes on top. It's hard to do from a seated position. And then this is the bowl, and you fill it to that line right there. So the most complicated part is the discs. And this is your moderator inside. You put it in, and twisting it allows the milk in or keeps the milk from going through. So now I'm going to take that off so you can see it. See, it sits like that. And so right now it's in the closed position, and then when I open it like that, it's in open position. But usually I just pull it out, and that lets the milk in. Once you get started, so you want to pour all the milk in at the same time. Leave the stopper in until you have the crank going. So leave the stopper in the closed position. Start cranking. And once you get it up to speed is when the crank kind of takes over for itself. And if once the crank kind of takes over for itself and it's not hard to crank anymore, that's when you pull the plug out. You don't want to go too fast. If you turn the crank too fast, you don't get a lot of cream. And then the cream comes out of one and the milk comes out of the other. And it's really straightforward. You just have one bowl under each one, And then, and I don't strain it before I put it in here. This actually cleans it really well. I don't strain it. It's too many bowls, too many dishes. So I'll have a really big bowl under the milk one and a small cream one under the cream one. And I'll run it through straight from the goat because it has to be warm. The milk has to be warm straight from the goat. If it's cold, the globules don't sort out correctly. And then after it has been separated, that's when I strain it. And you'll get like this green gunk inside the disc. Ugh, such a weakling. You'll get this green gunk inside the discs, and that's actually dirt that were soluble solvent dirt and grime that's in the milk, and the cream separator actually pulls it out. So when you clean it, you take everything apart, and I like to rinse it in lukewarm water so I get most of the stuff off, and then I will put a sink full of lukewarm water with washing soda in it, a teaspoon of washing soda. You don't use soap. So washing soda, at least this part up. The plastic I do use soap on, and I just do it separately. And you'll notice that your water will thicken. And it's kind of unnerving at first when it thickens, but that's just the washing soda reacting with the milk solids, and it just creates like a mucus. And then you rinse it in hot water if you want to, but while there's still milk solids on it, you don't want to wash it in hot water because the milk solids will actually cook on. But this is what it looks like, and so it's really simple. The thing that's the most time consuming is just getting the discs on in the right order, and once you have practice, when I'm doing a lot of it, it takes me 5 minutes to separate the cream, and then maybe 5 minutes to wash them all. And then I keep a towel in the bottom of my bucket, and so I just put them straight in the bucket and make sure the metal isn't touching each other so that they dry really nicely and don't rust. But I just keep this in the bottom, and I change out the towel every once in a while. And yeah, it works really good. And that was really long. I've never taken that long putting it together. It must just be because I've got the video in. Everything is just a little bit dusty, so it just doesn't want to go together. So that's my goat milking routine, and hopefully that was helpful. And again, I got this on eBay for $70, $30 shipping, and I have yet to have anything be wrong with it, so I highly recommend it.